Who are Archer's best teammates? Well, I'm going to answer that today. So let's just hop right into it. First of all, the fake collab is starting tomorrow. If you don't have pulls saved, that's okay because Archer's here for free. You're going to get him for free if you do 200 pulls, which you probably won't if you don't have pulls saved. But if you do get up to 200 pulls, you get his Litecoin for free as well. So very, very nice of Hoyo to do that for us to get a free, 5-star character and a really good, really strong 5-star character. Archer's kit is already out. Hoyo revealed it themselves. So you can look up what it is. I'm not going to talk directly about his kit in today's video, but I'm going to kind of base off, which units are going to go with his kit. Now, I want to get a couple ground rules set for the video and for the tiers specifically. So S tier is not going to have more than, I don't know, let's say like 6 units or so, mainly because you can't have like 7 units be, oh, these 7 are perfect for him. They're S tier. They're perfect for him. No, it doesn't work like that. Uh, so we're gonna have like, I don't know, 5, 6 units or something in the S tier, and then that's it. Not gonna put any more. The rest will go into the A tier if they are really good or whatever. And I do want to say that in the S tier alone, the units will be ranked on how good they are. So the ones on the left are going to be better than the ones on the right. But for the other tiers, I will not be ranking in terms of how good they are from left to right. So just in S tier, the order does matter. Now, another thing I do want to say before I get started is that Archer kind of has like a bias with what teams he wants. So Archer teams mainly will feature quantum units because you're most likely going to be pairing them up with something like Sparkle. So if you're pairing them up with Sparkle, also spoilers, if you're pairing up with Sparkle, that's what the S stands for actually, S for Sparkle. When you pair it with Sparkle, you need 3 quantum units at least. You can go 4 if you're like zero cycling or if your quantum is a sustain or something. So you need at least 3 to get the maximum benefit. So there's going to be kind of like a bias towards quantum units, but at the same time, there's not that many quantum units in the first place. So yeah, this should be everything I wanted to say before I get started with the video. And with that being said, let's just hop right into it. So we're just going to place them in order of whatever they appear here on this tier maker site. So let's just get started. I believe this is Destruction Trailblazer. Don't even think about it. I'm not even going to talk about it. Just don't even think about it. Don't think about it. I think this here is a Preservation Trailblazer. Preservation Trailblazer, I'm going to just say if you need a sustain, I guess, maybe. We're just going to throw them and see. Like, if you need to sustain, I guess it can work. But other than sustain, I wouldn't really recommend it because I just feel like there's so many better units you could use to sustain, especially because he only gives a shield. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about him. Now, Harmony Trailblazer, I'm not going to put in A, I'm going to put in B. And I'm going to put him just in B because I mean, Archer break teams doesn't really sound too good. If you want to run a break team, don't use Archer. Just use a different like break unit that's meant for break or something. So that's the reason I'm going to put him in B. Also, break is kind of falling out of meta. You could debatably put it in C. You could also debatably put it in A if you build a really solid break team. But I think in general, you're not going to be running Archer break. He's not meant for break. He's meant to do strong DPS. Um, Strong DPS when it's his turn. So yeah, that's the main reason he's there. Now, for the first unit, we're going to put an S tier. It was just kind of going up the tiers until now. First unit in S tier is going to be Remembrance Trailblazer, Remembrance MC. So Remembrance MC is an S tier because he can do so many things. Yes, it's a free unit. Oh my god, free unit S tier. What's going on? Crazy. It's honestly what Star Rail has been doing. When Preservation Trailblazer was out, he was really good for like 2 months. And then Harmony Trailblazer was meta for the entire like 2.x series. Now, of course, Remembrance Trailblazer is meta for the entire 3.x series. Remembrance Trailblazer is really, really strong because of the true damage buff and the action advance. So because of those two things, those two support capabilities, it's going to put them up to S tier. It also has some other neat supportive capabilities like extra crit rate. I think it's like 10% crit rate. They give the crit damage buff based on their own crit damage buff. They also do a little bit of damage, the energy and blah, blah, blah. So there's some other stuff they do as well, but it's mainly just action advance, true damage. Those two just push them into S tier. There is something you need to be aware. So the true damage buff is only about 3 turns, I believe. So if you run out of those 3 turns, you're not going to get the buff. Um, so you do kind of have to be a little bit careful, but when it comes to Archer, you don't need to be too careful because Archer uses up a lot of SP, and he doesn't take turns like crazy. He doesn't action advance his own turns like kind of like how Saber does. So that's the reason I put Remembrance MC in S tier. That being said, Remembrance MC is not going to be the best teammate. They're probably going to be towards the end of the S tier once I keep going down. Also, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. I'm going to keep moving my mouse. They're kind of going to be towards the end of the S tier, but they will still be in the S tier because the trio image buff is just insane. It's like around 30%. And then, like I said, action advance could also mess up your rotations depending on when it's used, how it's used, etc. So you need to be a little bit careful. There's going to be a couple units that I'm like not really going to talk about, and uh, Arlen, just no. Asta is Harmony, so you could. I wouldn't recommend it. It's also going to just be in the C tier. Bailu as well, just going to be in the C tier. Like if you need a sustain, Bailu will get the job done. She will sustain, but like you should use other sustains over Bailu. Bailu's really outdated. They're probably going to end up buffing her actually in like another year or two, if I'm being honest. But next up, we're going to go with Bronya. Now, Bronya is going to go in the A tier, which, some people might debate why is Bronya an A? Why isn't she an S? The reason Bronya is not an S is because out of the action advancing supports that, exist, Bronya is probably the worst of the three. I'm counting 3, 4, I guess, for Remembrance MC. But I'm mainly talking about like Sparkle, Bronya, Sunday. Bronya is the worst of the three when it comes to most teams. There's a few teams like quantum teams. You're going to use Sparkle. Maybe if there's like a single DPS with like for some other reason you might want to use Bronya, but there's like almost no situation where you'd ever want to use Bronya instead of Sunday, for example, because Sunday buffs are just more universal, and especially if they have a summon or whatnot. So that's why Bronya's an A. She's still really good. That's why she's an A. But there's better units. If you have Sunday, just if you need to use, Bronya or Sunday, just use Sunday instead of Bronya. So that's kind of why Bronya is an A. She's still good. She gives attack buff, crit damage buff, action advance, et cetera, et cetera. But she's very SP negative. Even with Eidolons, it's kind of, up to chance. Here, I think it's your E2, which gives like a 50% chance when you use skill to recover a skill point, but it's only once every 2 turns. So, if you have her light cone 2, even just S1 light cone, it's not as good as like Sunday S1 or whatever. So, for that reason, Bronya's going to be an A. She's still really good. If if you have her, if she's your only option, use her. You can do Bronya, Remembrance MC, Archer. Just use those 3 because they're all technically free. You could pick Bronya from the free 5-star selector that we had in the past. So yeah, that's why Bronya's an A. Still really good, or not really good. Still good. Gets the job done. Better than the other units so far. But in the end, there's better supporting units than Bronya. Next up, Clara. There's really no reason to use Clara. If you put them in the same team, you're not going to get any skill points. Dunhang, same thing. Japard's going to be in the C tier because, as a sustain, I didn't even talk about Dunhang. I don't need to talk about him. As a sustain, he can get the job done, but he's not who you'd want to use probably as a sustain unless you have Eidolons. But like even so, he doesn't give any offensive value compared to like these other units. So I'm gonna put him in C just because if you need to use a sustain, go ahead and use them. Next, Herta. I feel like Herta could probably be C, but I just don't see why you would use Herta or Himiko on the team or Hook. Hook is also just doesn't really make sense. March, I'm going to put in C as well because I feel like March doesn't really offer anything, kind of the same situation as Japard. Natasha is going to be probably, I don't know if she's worse than Byler or not, whatever. We're just going to put her there. Natasha is a healer. She's free. You get her for free. If you want to use Natasha as your, same with March, you can do them. I don't know where to put the sustains, honestly. I could put them in D. I could put them in, I don't think they should be in B though. But yeah. Uh, next up, we're going to talk about Pela. Now, Pela used to be, like about a year ago, probably the best 4-star support in the game. She, debatably still is the best 4-star support in the game. But nowadays, there's a lot better units when it comes to doing what Pela does, which is, defense down, supporting capabilities for the team. Like, just for example, Cypher. Cypher does exactly what Pela does, just like upgraded. She's like Pela Plus, Pela, but like much better, especially the free Lycone resolution of Pearl's Sweat or something, whatever it's called. Cypher's Lycone is just that, but better. So, Yeah, Payla's still very good. She still does AoE defense on her ult. You know, if you give her the resolution, pearls, whatever, she does defense down on her normal attacks, etc., etc. But that's all she brings. But at the same time, that's it's a very good thing. If you're free to play, if you're just starting the game for the fake collab, she might be all you have. She's good. She's an A tier. She's good. There's better units, but she's good. QQ, you're not going to use them on the same team probably ever. I don't see why you would. Sampo also doesn't really make sense. Serval doesn't really make sense. Sishang doesn't really make sense. Now let's talk about Tingyun. So Tingyun, I am gonna put her in A. You can debate Tingyun S, but at the same time, I don't think so. I think Tingyun. So I would probably say Tingyun better than Pela. Actually, I don't know. I don't know. Debatable. Debatable. Tingyun energy regens. Archer's ult is very very strong. His ultimate has a very high multiplier. It was nerfed a little bit, but it was very very strong. It is very very strong. It's a very good multiplier. So that's why Tingyun is a little higher than I would say Pela in my opinion. If you're free to play, maybe you just go Tingyun Pela and Remembrance MC as your 3 units. You put Archer as the 4th one. You could probably zero cycle. Honestly, you could probably zero cycle with the right sets, speed tuning, etc. There's a good chance you could, but end of the day, there's better options than Tingyun. She's still good. She's still very good. She's been out since like basically release, or maybe she was out since release. So, very good option. Attack buff, energy, regen, etc., etc. But actually, I would say Pela better. I don't know. I still put her in A. Still very good, very useful, but just not really necessary. Well, I'm going to put in C just because Welt does have a bit of supportive capabilities with his imaginary element, and he does offer slows in his kit. But end of the day, you're probably not going to use Welt. I'm going to put Yang Qing and D. You're not going to use them together. Silo, I'm going to put in C as well because, if you do some crazy mono quantum tricks, I could see that working. But realistically, you're probably not going to use Silo. Now, the next S unit is going to be Silverwolf. Silverwolf is S because obviously quantum units give a slight advantage for Archer, but also Silverwolf debuffs are very, very strong. Now that she got buffed, they're very, very strong. She's basically Pela Plus. Like I was saying, there's a couple units that are Pela Plus. Silverwolf is one of them. It's like Silverwolf Cypher. They're just Pela Plus, really. So if you want to use Pela, but you have Silverwolf, just use Silverwolf. Silverwolf is better in, I believe, every situation, unless I'm misremembering something. You can correct me about that. But especially for Archer, Silverwolf should just be better in every situation. So Silverwolf debuff is very strong. Her ult is pretty quick now, especially with a certain light cone that you can equip, etc., etc. You can build her full support. You can build it to do some damage. Whatever you want to do, Silverwolf is going to be very good as the 3rd quantum option in a mono quantum team, or 4th quantum option, I guess, whatever you classify it as. She's very, very good, very, very strong. If you have her, you might as well throw her on the team. There's really no reason not to. Next up, we're going to go with Locha. Locha is going to be an A tier. Like I said, really A tier. I'm not really ranking them based on their positions. I'm just kind of throwing them in there. Even though I moved the Pale and Tingyun earlier, I'm just throwing them in there. Locha is a pretty good healer, and I believe he gives attack buff. I don't know. I would maybe B tier, top of B tier. I would say top of B tier. I don't think I would put him in A tier. Top of B tier. He's a healer. He gives, I believe, some sort of attack buff, does a little bit of damage, but at the end of the day, he's like a 1.x unit. He's useful. He's good. He gets the job done. But if you're going to be running a sustain, there's a couple better options that are around, and I'm going to talk about them in a minute. So I would say Locha not quite as good as those other options, but still, gets a job done better than these sustains for sure, like Japard, Bailu, etc. Yukong, I would put in B tier. She does give a buff, which goes pretty good with Archer, but it's only for 1 turn, I believe. And the thing is, Archer does use a lot of skill points on his 1 turn, but Yukong's not a very good unit just in general. So yeah, there's like if you're gonna use Yukong, just use any of the units above Yukong instead, and you're probably gonna have a much better time. Basically, yes, she will work, but not recommended. Blade, I don't know. You could run some crazy Blade Archer team and maybe make it work. So I'll just throw him in C, I guess. Next, Kafka. I don't. Maybe I don't know. You could run Kafka support, I guess. Because she's Nihility, you can give her some support light cones, and she has some supportive capabilities in her kit now with the buffs. But overall, you're probably not going to run Kafka. Like anything C down, you probably should not run. B up, I would say yes, you can run them. If you have them, you might try them out or whatever. But like C down, I just would not recommend. Kind of the same thing for Luca. C, like maybe. Like these units, I'm just throwing them in C because like maybe, maybe you could do it. Maybe. Don Hung, you're not going to do way too many skill points. Fu Zhuan, I'm actually going to put in A tier instead of B tier. You might be saying Fu Zhuan in A? What's going on? The main reason Fu Zhuan is an A is because if you're running, three quantum or mono quantum or whatever, you're going to need a third quantum or a fourth quantum. And Fuzhuan does fill that gap while also providing buffs. She gives a crit rate buff on no eidolons, just flat crit rate buff. She gives damage buff with her light cone. She is mitigation, very good mitigation. Healing, etc. She provides a lot of good sustain and a few buffs, not very good buffs, kind of minor buffs, but a few buffs that does help out. And if you just need a third quantum to fill that slot, I would put her in there. You can debate, maybe top of B tier, bottom A tier. I would put her around that area because she does get the job done. Once you get some more eidolons on Fujuan, she does give some more buffs, like the crit damage buff, etc. So she does give some more buffs. If you get some super impositions on her light cone, that makes that better as well. Some damage there for the team, etc. Overall, there's better sustain, but Fujuan gets the job done. If you need a sustain, she can do it. She can be there. She can be there. For that same reason, I would put Lynx in B tier though, just because Lynx doesn't give the buffs Fujuan does give. The thing is, Lynx is a healer. Fujuan not really a healer. She has a very little bit of healing in her kit. Um, so if you need a healer for content, not a preservation unit, you would run Lynx instead, let's say, for example. But Lynx doesn't really give any offensive buffs like Fujuan does, especially with the Fujuan Light Cone. So yeah, of course, Lynx does have access to Quid Pro Cure or whatever, QP, QP, whatever the light cone is that gives energy. So she does have access to that, but end of the day, she is a quantum unit too. So if you need a quantum healer, she gets the job done as well. But Fujuan is in the standard pool now, so you can just end up pulling Fujuan. Who really knows? Jingliu, you're not really gonna run. Doesn't really make too much sense. Topaz has a few debuffs, so I could see Topaz potentially being used. She has debuffs with her light cone, with her just kit in general. She does some decent damage. There's a lot of hits if you're running her with maybe like a Archer, Topaz, Cypher, Sparkle comp or something. You could make that work for some reason or somehow, but I wouldn't really recommend it. It could be done, but you know, maybe not. Maybe there's better units. Gwenifin, I'm going to throw in C tier because she does have some debuffs as well, but not really the best debuffs, but does have debuffs. Like you can use her, but I wouldn't recommend it per se. Yes, usable, not recommended. That's kind of just how it goes. Next up, Ho-Ho. This is going to be the first really controversial take that you can probably throw into the video. I'm going to throw Ho-Ho in S tier. I'm gonna say she's probably underneath Remembrance Trailblazer. I would say Remembrance Trailblazer probably more important. Probably not more important, but better than Ho-Ho because of the fact that she's a sustain, she's easily replaceable, etc. She's also not quantum, not that Remembrance has used quantum, but yeah, I'm gonna throw her in S tier because her energy regen and attack buff is pretty huge. You throw QPQ on her, she regens energy when it's her turn as well. You can make her very fast, so she keeps regenerating energy for everyone. She can be SP neutral, probably at best. SP neutral, maybe slightly SP positive. You can give her that set that gives a skill point at the beginning too. So I would say she's top of S tier. Or not top of S tier, sorry. She's the best support right now. Best support that we've gone through. Or not support, sustain. Best sustain we've gone through so far. Ho is getting kind of a bit of a resurgence lately with, Aglaya, Saber, Witcher, etc. So yeah, I would put her there. Very good sustain because she offers attack buff, energy buff. Energy buff is very hard to get. Like I said, Archer's ult does huge damage. So you charge his ult, you charge someone else's ult. Maybe you're running Archer Sunday Ho-Ho comp. It's not going to be Archer's best team, but that team will be very good. And Ho is probably the best support, or not support, best sustain you can get for a comp like that. Next up, we're going to go with Argenti. Argenti is just not happening. Then we're going to go with Hanya. Hanya is going to be in the B tier. I'm going to move Hanya up a little bit, probably like here. Like I said, I'm not really supposed to be ranking them on their position, but I kind of am. The general area, I would say Hanya is finally usable with Archer because Archer requires a lot of skill points, but at the same time, Hanya is just so outclassed. Like there's so many units better than Hanya that you can use, such as Sparkle, for example. Sparkle's like the main one. So it's just like completely outclasses Hanya in every imaginable way. So you would just never use Hanya over Sparkle. But if you're free to play, maybe you want to run a Harmony. You can throw Hanya in there. She will work. At the same time, let's talk about Ron May. Now, Ron May, debatable if you want to put her in A or B. I'm personally going to put her like bottom of A tier. I would say Ron May's nowhere near his best Harmony unit, but she's a very solid Harmony unit. If you just need, let's say you're trying to zero cycle, you just need the fourth Harmony unit, something that can help offensively. Toss Ron May in there. She gives Ron May. She gives a lot of universal buffs that a lot of units can use, such as Archer. Especially if you already pulled her in the past, maybe you got her free E1 or free E2 or whatever. Not free E2, but you get some free Eidolons. She's in the shop, etc. Light cone, everything. So there's a lot of ways that she can be very skill point positive while giving speed and some other universal buffs. So that's the reason I put her in A tier. Definitely usable. Not the best Harmony by any means, but definitely usable. Dr. Razor, you're not going to use. Ray, you're not going to use. Black Swan has a defense down. So I would put her actually B tier. She has a defense down, AoE defense down, I believe, on her skill. I believe it gives all 3 targets a defense down. And she's Nihility, so you can run like Cypher Light Cone or something. So, could be very useful there. Potential. If that's like one of the only 5 stars you have, go for it. That'll work. Next up, I've been talking about her already so many times. I mentioned her name. Sparkle, S tier. Sparkle is going to be Archer's #1 teammate. There's no unit that can replace Sparkle. You can say, oh, Sunday replaces Sparkle. You run just -1 Sunday. But that's not ideal because the thing with Archer is he needs to be, not needs to, but he really, really wants attack boots. If you're running attack boots, you're not running speed boots. If you're not running speed boots, you're not hitting 135 speed. If you're not hitting 135 speed or 134 speed, whatever it is, there's no reason to do a -1. Or I mean, you could do a -1 setup, but you're missing an entire extra turn in a cycle. So let's say at 135 speed with -1 setup, you get 6 turns in the first cycle, right? First cycle on like first half, and then second half you get 3 turns each cycle. So you're missing an entire extra turn, so it's only going to be 2. And then obviously your support that's -1 goes again after. So it's going to be 2 and 2. So you're only going to get like, you're basically just missing an entire, you're getting 8 turns instead of 12 turns, how it goes. Because you get 4 first half, 4 second half. So you only get 8 turns compared to the 3 first half, 3 second half. So you get 3 Archer, 3 Sunday, which boosts Archer up again. So there's really no reason to not, or to run Sunday and Bronya. They do give 100% action advance. They are good. But Sparkle is just much better because of the quantum buff she gives. For quantum units specifically, and also, like I said, that whole speed thing. Archer needs attack boots because he uses a lot of skill points on his turn, and he wants to do as much damage as possible on his turn. You don't want to take like extra turns. Obviously, that would be fine, but it's better to just run full attack boots and get the extra turns. Or full attack boots and get the extra damage rather than the extra turn for Archer specifically. Because like I said, skill points is a major issue when it comes to using him. So Sparkle and S tier, mainly because, like I said, for quantum units, he gives like 25% extra attack just for quantum units, which is pretty insane, while already giving skill points, which Archer desperately needs, while giving action advance. If you're running a 161 or 162 Sparkle, you're going to get, instead of the 3 turns or whatever per cycle, it's going to be 4 turns per cycle, which gives you an extra turn. And then you can run just base speed Archer with attack boots, Sparkle at 161. Sparkle will push Archer, and Archer will go next and get the buff. The only downside with Sparkle is that her Light Cone sucks. You don't want to really run her Light Cone. You would rather run Bronya Light Cone or Sunday Light Cone, which is better than Bronya Light Cone, unless you have it like S5 or something. So that's the only downside, but like that's whatever. Just pick up the Bronya Light Cone from the shop, If you don't have the Sunday Light Cone, just pick up the Bronya one from the shop. And yeah, with that, Sparkle is just absolutely insane for Archer. His #1 teammate cannot be replaced by anybody. So Sparkle 100%, if you have her, you need to run her. Now, Juei, Acheron, you're not going to use. Aventurine, I'm going to throw also A tier. Aventurine gives a few debuffs. He gives shields. He's a very strong sustain. I would say he's better than Lynx unless you need a Quantum. If you need a Quantum, then you have to run like Lynx or Fujuan instead. Other than that, Aventurine better than them. Just for the buffs, debuffs, etc. he gives. with his light cone and his kit, everything. Adventuring, very good. But of course, like if you're going to be running a sustain, I would say run Ho-Ho instead. Or Gallagher. Gallagher, I'm going to place in the A tier just because, like I said, I don't want to fit too many units in the S tier. But if you don't have Ho-Ho, run Gallagher. Gallagher is the next best sustain other than Ho-Ho. Because, like I said, Ho-Ho is kind of SP negative slash SP neutral. You can run her SP neutral. But Gallagher, you can run completely SP positive. You run it with QPQ. He's going to be regenerating energy for your team. You just ult and or maybe even run him with multiplication, which is a 3-star light cone. After every normal auto attack or basic attack, advances action by like 20%. So you can get turns faster, regen more skill points, etc. You can say it's debatable. Ho-Ho and Gallagher should swap positions, but I would say Ho-Ho is better because of the buffs that she gives in the ult regen, etc. It can be very crucial to zero cycle with that unit. So that's the reason I'm going to put Gallagher in A and Ho-Ho in S. Like I said, you can debatably switch them, very debatably switch them. 100%, if you switch them, I would be like, okay, I completely understand why you would switch them. It makes sense. But at the end of the day, my opinion, Ho-Ho over Gallagher. Next up, we're going to talk about Robin. Robin, I'm going to put A tier as well, kind of towards the top of A tier. You can also put her kind of in the middle. Robin is very good. After every attack, she will do the damage. She does the action, advance, etc. I would say she's better on manual than auto, though. So if you have to kind of be a manual player to get the most out of her. But at the end of the day, she's very good. The attack buff she gives, the action, advance, etc. All these things. The downside, like I said, she's not quantum. Maybe if you run her as a fourth member to zero cycle, that can work. But she's not quantum. You're going to need 3 quantum units if you're running Sparkle, and you should run Sparkle. That is going to be his best team. So that's kind of the main downside. Also, like I said, I think Remembrance MC might just be better because if you're going to be running in a solo carry comp, Remembrance MC buff is just too massive compared to the Robin buff. Like Robin buff does not offset the Remembrance MC buff. In my opinion, I would say Remembrance MC is just better than Robin as that fourth member, let's say, if you're running 3 quantum and then a fourth member. So that's my opinion. At the end of the day, up to you if you want to use it or not. Firefly, Boot Hill, you're not going to use. Let's put Jade in B tier. Jade is not ideal for Archer. Jade works. Jade's a quantum unit. If you run like Archer Sparkle Jade, it'll work, but it's not ideal. If you do have her E1, she gets a lot of hits off with Archer hitting all the time. So if you have E1, you could probably bump her up to like A tier because that would be better. But end of the day, Jade is not really going to be Archer's ideal teammates. Everything in A and up, I would say, is like very good, but everything in B down, B usable, C down bad, like bad. C down bad. D is like terrible. C bad. B like usable. A like okay, they're good. S is just like perfect. S completely like very very good. Next, Yunli, we're going to throw her in D tier. Zhao Chu, we're going to put in C tier, usable. You potentially put him in B tier or like top of C tier or something. He does give debuffs, but at the end of the day, the only unit Zhao Chu is really good for is going to be Acheron. If you're not using Acheron, you kind of don't really want to do that. Next, March. I actually didn't test to see how March's interaction works with like the Shifu and Archer. I'm assuming every time Archer does a skill, which would be 4 times per turn, that it'll activate her Shifu, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. I'm going to say the exact same thing with Fei Zhao. I'm not sure if it does activate it, but at the end of the day, you don't really want to run Fei Zhao with Archer. I guess if his skill point does every single time hit, 4 times, I would proc Fei Zhao's thing 4 times, so like maybe, but I'm not sure that would be a very good, very good thing to do. Next, Lingsha. We're going to put Lingsha in B tier. If you need a sustain, she's going to be better than Bailu, Japard, March, Natasha, etc. She's going to be better than them, but at the same time, she's not going to be as good as like Adventuring, Fujuan, Ho-Ho, Gallagher, etc. She's not as good as them. So better than the previous sustains, but not as good as the next sustains, if that makes any sense. Waja, I'm going to put in B tier as well. I'm going to put in B tier because he is is he quantum? I'm pretty sure he's quantum. I don't know. He's the lightning. Honestly, I've never used him. I've never used him. Maybe he's lightning. Um, so I don't want to say he's quantum. Maybe he's lightning, but he does some decent damage, and he's actually pretty decent of a unit if you do want to run him. Usable, definitely usable. But would I recommend it? Probably not. Usable, yes. Recommend, no. Rappa, we're going to throw in D tier. You're not going to run Rappa. Sunday, we're going to put in A tier, probably towards the top of A tier. Sunday's just a better Bronya. Actually, I would say Robin over Sunday. Probably Gallagher over them. Um, Probably Pela over them as well. Probably something like this maybe. Um, Sunday's just a better Bronya, really. If you are gonna run Bronya and you have Sunday, just run Sunday. Unless maybe if you have E6 Bronya, but like at the same time, I don't know. I would say just run Sunday instead, especially with his light cone. Very SP positive. The buffs he gives are very universal. Great unit in general. Both of them very good. Both of them very good. But would I recommend them instead of Sparkle? No. Run Sparkle instead of either of them. But like I said, very, very good if you need them. Next, Fugue, we're gonna put her in B. B tier, maybe towards the top of B tier. I'm not going to put her in A. She's not, I feel, good enough with Archer to be an A tier. Just probably B tier. Because if she's Nihility, you can run defense on Lycon, etc. on her. She does have that super break capabilities, but you don't really want to run her with Archer. It doesn't really make too much sense. You're not going to be running a super break Archer. It's not really the setup to use. Herta is going to be D tier. Aglaya going to be D tier. Now we're going to talk about the next S tier unit, Tribby. Now, Tribby is going to be under. So this is kind of an addendum. Tribby is worse than Silverwolf at E0, but at E1, she's above Tribby. So if you have E1 Tribby in like E0 or maybe even E1, E2 Silverwolf, etc., I believe E1 Tribby is just better than like maybe even up to like E4, E5, maybe E6 Silverwolf. E1 Tribby is just better because the E1 true damage buff that Tribby gets, probably the best E1 in the game. So the true damage buff is just insane. She's also quantum, etc. If you run Dance and Dance, action advances, boosting, etc. There's so many good things Tribby brings to the table that, especially at E1, insane. At E0, I would say she's under Silverwolf, but E1, 100% bring her over Silverwolf. The true damage buff is insane. At E1, you could probably bring just like these 4 units: Archer, Sparkle, Silverwolf, Tribby, and you could probably like zero cycle every content in the game currently. Probably, I'm not 100% sure. Probably zero cycle every content in the game currently because they're just so strong together. And the debuffs that Silverwolf gives, the buffs Tribby gives, the buffs Sparkle gives, etc., just makes Archer do insane damage. Tribby's SP positive, which is massive. But the only thing is that she's very slow. So if you build her for personal damage, you're going to build her slow, like 90 speed, 90, 93, anything under 95 speed, right? She's going to do extra damage, but she's not going to be regenerating the skill points. But if you build her fast, then she will be able to regen skill points while still providing the buffs. So specifically for Archer, you want to build her a fast Tribby who doesn't really focus on damage, just focuses entirely on support because her damage is not really that much in the grand scheme on this team specifically. Especially because Sparkle would buff attack. Tribby is not an attack damage unit. She's an HP scaling unit. So yeah, those things, like I said, if you're running her in the Castores team, you don't want to change her speed. It'll still work. But of course, her fast build is better than the slow build. So I'm going to put her in S. Only like 2 more S units, and then there's no more S units. So there we go. Like I said, and of course the MC counts as like 1 picture. You can't say MC's 2 pictures. It's 1 picture. So we're gonna fit the quota. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're gonna get 7. I told you 6 or 7 S units, and that's it. Okay. Now Mighty is gonna be in D tier. You're not gonna run Mighty. Castores, you're probably not gonna run. I'm just gonna put her in C because you could, I guess. She does give the field. If you run her on manual, entirely support, I guess you can maybe throw her in like B tier or something. Like it's possible. But in general, I would say probably in C tier, you're probably not gonna run them together. Same thing with the Noxa. Doesn't give a field or anything, but he does some pretty good damage. He's also decent support. Would I recommend it? No, but I'm gonna just throw him in the C tier just cause. Hyacine, we're gonna put in the B tier. As a support, she's pretty good. Probably around here and there. I'm just going to put her with the other healers in that category. All right, Lingsha's not there. Let's put Lingsha there too. I don't know which is better between them, but Hyacine does give debuff on her ult when you have her light cone, etc., etc. Her damage is pretty good. Maybe you run a Tribby Hyacine with Sparkle. So you'd have your 3 quantum while Tribby Hyacine also doing some pretty good damage. Because Hyacine does buff HP, Tribby's HP scaling. You build Tribby for damage. Tribby Hyacine damage is actually going to be pretty good when you run them together. Only when you run them together on the same team. So, you know, You run Archer, Sparkle, Tribby, and then Hyacinth as your fourth member, and that would be a pretty good team. You could probably 0 or 1 cycle, probably 1 cycle, maybe 2 cycle, depending on the boss or how many Eidolons. If you have Eidolons, probably 0 cycle, you know. End of the day, Hyacinth's good. Would I say her over Adventuring? Only if you're running Tribby as well. Only with Tribby as well. If you don't have Tribby as well, no. Now, the next S unit is going to be Cypher. Now, Cypher is very, very strong, very, very good unit for 0 cycling, especially on manual. If you're not playing on manual, she kind of loses some value, but she's still good. Loses value, still good. But obviously still very good because she's quantum, does good, great damage, very, very fast unit, gives a lot of free buffs herself, defense debuff to the enemies, etc. Very, very strong unit. That's why she's an S tier. Would I say Cypher or Silverwolf if you have to pick one? Let's say you're running Archer, Sparkle, Ho-Ho, and then you need either Silverwolf or Cypher. I personally would say Cypher over Silverwolf. That's my opinion. Just because of the fact that she's a newer unit. Yeah, Silverwolf just to get buffed, but Cypher's a newer unit. The buffs she gives are better. The true damage on her ult can just completely obliterate a boss's HP bar if used, on manual during the right time. Just save it until the very end and then use it at the very end. You can like completely skip the last phase of the boss, depending on how much damage you've done, etc. So for that reason, I would say Cypher over Silverwolf. But you can just run all of them together. If you have both, they both kind of do very, very similar thing. They fit the same niche, etc. But like I said, at the end of the day, E1 Tribby over all of them, over the both of them. But maybe if you have like E2 Cypher would be like over here. It'd be better, something like that. But at E0, I would say Tribby not as good as them when it comes to the team. Next, Finon, you're going to throw them in D tier. You're not going to be running them both together. Saber, you're not really going to run them together, but I can't put Saber lower than B tier because it's Archer and Saber. You can't. I have to put her in B tier. It just doesn't make sense for me to not put Saber in B tier there. Next up, Hysolins. I don't know how great exactly her buff will be. So I'm just going to put her here because she does give a lot of debuffs. She's Nihility, which means you can run like Cypher Light Cone. She has a field or a zone, I believe, which, boosts damage. So with all those together, she would actually be pretty decent support unit. Potentially into the A tier, somewhere in the A tier. But I'm going to put her top of B for now, just because I'm not 100% positive that you would want to run Heisland on a team. I don't think you would, but you can. You definitely can. That's why she's in B tier. But would you? Probably not. You probably would not. Next, Seriadra. Now, Seriadra, I would say like bottom of S tier. Um, because the buffs she gives are only for her skill. Now, if they change her buffs, she's not out yet. I'm not going to spoil her kit too much. If they change her buffs to be from like team wide instead of just skill, you could potentially put her, like single, like definitely an S, maybe like higher in the S tier. But for now, I would put her like either top of A or like bottom of S, somewhere around here. I'm not sure exactly where I would want her. I'll just put her at the bottom of S for now. She's not as good as the other units for Spark or for Sparkle, for Archer, because she's not Quantum, she's Wind. So if you do run her, you still need to run 3 more Quantum. Let's say you go like Archer, Sparkle, Cypher, and then Seridra. You could probably 0 cycle. Probably going to be very strong comp. But you're not going to run Seridra unless you're trying to 0 cycle, basically. Or if you don't have Sparkle and you're running like a Archer, Seridra, Sunday or something. I don't know. That's the only comp I can think of. The thing with Seridra is, like I said, she gives very strong skill damage buffs. So Archer skills are going to hit like crazy. And he does use 4 skills per turn. So his skills are going to be very, very strong. But she gives like very little buff outside of that. It's like a small attack buff outside of the skill damage buff. So she's also very SP positive. So that's why she's kind of up there at the S tier. If you do need skill points, let's say you have no Eidolons on Archer or Sparkle or anything, you might be running into a few skill point problems. Seridra is very SP positive. You never need to use her skill besides maybe once at the beginning of battle. I don't even think you need to use it once if you use her technique or anything. So at the end of the day, very SP positive, very strong skill buff. But like I said, probably not as good as other units. You could debatably put her in A. But that's everything. That's all the units. I took a very long time making this video. I did not think it was going to take this long. Let me know what you guys think about the video. Of course, if you have Eidolons on these units, it's gonna change it up a bit, like the placements. But I'm not really talking about Eidolons too much besides like the Tribi E1, because the Tribi E1 is like very, very huge. A lot of people have the Tribi E1 just because of how massive the true damage buff is. If you have that true damage buff, I would not recommend running Remembrance Trailblazer with the team because I just feel like it's kind of redundant, not really necessary. You should probably run a debuffer instead as a fourth member or anything. But yeah, there's Archer. There's his teammate tier list. If you have at least three of the members in the S tier, you're gonna be golden. You can just throw three of them together, and that's his perfect team. Of course, Surge is not out yet, or Hisselins, but Hisselins is in B tier, so don't worry about Hisselins. But Surge is not out yet. She'll be coming out in next patch, 3.5. So if you want her, get her there. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on the tier list. I think this is pretty objectively correct. There's a few changes you might be able to make, like move one unit a tier up or a tier down or something. Debatable. But end of the day, I think this is very correct. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to talk, join the Discord. We could talk about Star Rail or whatever. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry for not uploading in like years. I've been very, very busy. That's going to be everything. Hope you guys take care. Have a nice trip.